Welcome back. So this week we're going to start on Unit 5 of the GCSE course, which is one of the more difficult units that we've come across so far. It contains lots of stuff on equations, inequalities and number sequences. We're going to start off really simply, and I'm going to build that up to try and get you so that you can answer the most difficult questions you're likely to see on a GCSE foundation paper. And we're going to start by solving simple equations. Now, all an equation is a calculation where you're trying to find something which is embedded on one of the sides of the calculation. So, for example, here I know that 3 times something plus 5 equals 17. And what it's asking me to do is to work out what that something is. And the way we do this is we write out the equation using a flow diagram. So I think of this number a, and I'm thinking to myself, what have I done to a to give me 17? Well, what's this telling me? It tells me that the first thing I've done to it is multiplied it by 3. That 3 in front tells me I'm timesing it by 3. So I'm going to draw myself a flow diagram which says a times by 3, which is what I did to it here. And then, what have I done? Well, I've added 5. That would have given me the answer of 17. So what I'm then going to need to do is work backwards using inverse operations to solve it. So working backwards, I'm starting at 17 and I need to work backwards to find out what I'd get for a. So let's have a look at what that looks like. Well, the opposite of adding 5, the inverse of adding 5, is taking away 5. The inverse of timesing by 3 is dividing by 3. So here I've got 17 take away 5, which is 12. 12 divided by 3 then gives me 4. And it means that I can then put my answer as a equals 4. If I want to check it, I could just substitute back in. So I could say 3 times 4 is 12, plus 5 is 17. I must be right. Okay, well, let's look at the next one. Now, we need to be careful here because we just need to think about how we can rearrange that. 6 plus 4m equals 14. It doesn't matter which way round the 6 and the 4m go. So I'm going to just swap them round, and I'm going to rewrite it firstly as 4m plus 6 equals 14. Addition can happen in either order. So, again, I start with my m, I'm timesing it by 4, I'm adding 6, and that gives me 14. If I'm working backwards, I'm going to have to take away 6 and divide by 4. Well, 14 take away 6 is going to give me 8. 8 divided by 4 is going to give me 2. So I can say that m equals 2. And let me just check that. 6 plus 4 times 2, well, 4 times 2 is 8. 6 plus 8 gives me 14. So it must be the right answer. It can get a little bit more complicated. So here I've got 2x over 3 take away 2 equals 2. So we think about what that means. I start with x. The first thing I'm doing is timesing it by 2. Then that 3 underneath tells me that I must have divided it by 3. I've then taken away 2, and it's given me the answer of 2. So I work backwards. The inverse of take away 2 is add 2. The inverse of divide by 3 is times by 3. The inverse of times by 2 is divide by 2. So let's work out what that would be. I've got 2 plus 2 is 4, times it by 3 is 12, divided by 2 is 6, and it tells me that x equals 6. I do find it easier to write this x in a slightly different way from I would write the normal letter x. The reason why is because I don't want to confuse it for a multiplication sign. Okay, the last one is somewhat more complicated. So, very similar to what we had before. I take my x, I times it by 7, I divide it by 2, and then I add 3 to give me 5. Working backwards, I'm going to have to take away 3, I'm going to have to times by 2, and then I'm going to have to divide by 7. Well, 5 take away 3 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, 4 divided by 7 I can't do. So I'm just going to leave it as a fraction, 4 divided by 7. So in this case, x equals 4 divided by 7. And I just leave that exactly as it is as a fraction. In some cases, I could end up with an improper fraction, in which case it may ask me to turn it into a mixed number. Okay, pause the video, make sure that you've got down those 4 worked examples, and then once you're ready, press unpause and we can go on to the questions. Okay, so here are 15 questions for you to try. For question 4, 5 and 6, for questions 4 and 5, you're going to end up with a fractional answer. Just make sure you simplify that and give it in its simplest form. For question 7, you will end up with an improper fraction. I'd like you to turn that, please, into a mixed number for me. For questions 10 and 11, you've got a half of x. So remember that when you're dividing by half, it's the same as multiplying by 2. Okay, for each of them, can you draw down the flow diagram, work backwards, and try and work out what the letter represents? Pause the video while you give that a go, and then we'll work through the solutions. Okay, very well done. So here are the solutions. A couple of ones that I do just want to go through with you quickly. So question 6, you had 4x plus 11 equaled 3. So making sure that you change that to take away 11 when you're looking at the inverse. 3 take away 11 would have given you negative 8. So just be careful with those negative numbers. Negative 8 divided by 4 would have given you negative 2. In questions 4, 5, 7 and 14, you ended up with an improper fraction. Make sure that if you've got that tool, you cancel it down to its simplest form. So here you did 21 take away 7 was 14. 14 divided by 4 doesn't go exactly. So you've got 14 divided by 4, which is 7 over 2, simplifying that down, which gave you 3.5. On question 4, 14 and 15, notice they've just given them to you in a slightly confusing order. It doesn't matter whether it's on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side of the equal sign, or whether the x or the number comes first. So here this is exactly the same as saying 4x plus 7 equals 21. Okay, give yourself a mark then out of 15. If you need any more assistance on this topic, and please do make sure that you're absolutely fine on this because it does get more complicated from here on in, then can you go to Hegarty clip number 177, please? Very, very well done. So there's Hegarty clip number 177 and giving yourself a mark out of 15.